Hempcrete essentially, hemp hurd, which is the inner woody core of the hemp stalk, with the lime-based binder and water. Thousands of years old, and what it makes is a mold-resistant, pest-resistant, rot-resistant, and fire-resistant, ultimate in indoor air quality, carbon sequestering construction infill that self-regulates vapor permeability, and self-regulates humidity, self-regulates thermal performance. In Hempcrete, obviously, it's an infill. If we could go back and rename Hempcrete, we would. We'd call it Hempfill, because it gives people the misimpression that Hempcrete is a substitute for concrete. And actually, it's not. It has to be above ground, daylight. It's a living, breathable wall system that cannot touch the earth. I think what the most interesting thing about Hempcrete is that when we're talking about a climate such as we're here in Portland, we don't actually need to include a heating or a cooling system. Ultimately, we could save the money in not installing those systems, but if we did, they could be less strong systems, particularly when we get into HVAC and larger builds. And then, of course, we save the money and the energy from not having to use those systems. So we're talking about a smart income home as well. Of course, when we talk about modern day construction, we're talking about buildings that last maybe 50, if you're lucky, 80 years. More than 50% of our landfills are actually filled with construction waste from these basically temporary homes. A 40-year home is a temporary home. When we talk about Hempcrete, we're saying these homes will last 300 to 500 years, perhaps even longer. And that's not a guess, that's not an estimate, because Hempcrete is new. Again, this is thousands of years old. We have existing Hempcrete structures in Japan, in India. So ultimately what we're talking about is a home that is durable and frankly reusable and recyclable. It's truly the ultimate building material.
Today we have built a demo wall out of Hempcrete, and the purpose of this is kind of just to show people how you can build with this material in more of a practical application where you would see it as a wall with the frame, with the light switch and socket and stuff like that.
Now, hemp is absorbing a whole lot of CO2 while it is growing, so we're doing something wonderful there. The growth cycle of hemp, 90 to 120 days for the type of fiber we're looking at. And so this is a fast-growing, renewable, carbon-absorbing biomass. So a basic Hempcrete recipe is 4-1-1. 4 parts industrial hemp hurd to 1 part lime-based binder to 1 part water. So we take that appropriately processed and dried hemp hurd, we add the water to it so that the hurd can soak up that water, because once we add the lime binder into the water, we're gonna start to get our chemical set. So hurd, then water, then lime, mixed together. About 7 or 8 minutes once you've got the good mix. Test it to make sure you don't have too much or too little water, which again will change with the temperature and humidity of the day, how much water you use. And then we cast that mix, that Hempcrete, which is basically putting it in the wall. If it were concrete, they would call it pouring. Since it's Hempcrete, we call it casting. And then we tamp around the edges and the timber framing, and we continue on up until we have gotten to the top of our form. We remove the form, put the form up a little bit higher, and repeat that process. Get 15 great people there from your community. You empower them on how to build their own home, much like the Amish barn raising, and you get your building done in a day depending on how big it is. Mix, cast, and tamp. At the end of your Hempcrete home's life, that structure's life, you can actually take that Hempcrete home apart, crack that Hempcrete up, and put it into your next Hempcrete mix. Or you could use it as some type of a soil amendment. So we're talking about reusable, recyclable, and durable. It just doesn't get any better than that.